We've been blessed to have a couple of good water years, but let's face it, Utah is a desert, and a big use of our resource is our home landscaping. How can we be more water wise? Let's welcome Mary Martin, the Associate Planner for Spanish Fork City, to the table.
Hello, Mary.
Hi.
That sounds so scary. How can we become water wise? Like,
Oh, I thought you meant her title.
Oh no,
Like,
that's
that's
a big
a
title.
title.
Fabulous. Water wise, tell us, what do we need to know about this?
So WaterWise is really about having like a functional, attractive, easy to maintain, and most importantly, water efficient landscape.
Yeesh.
Most important.
That sounds like a lot. Okay.
Yes.
Teach us the ways.
So we have a big problem, like you guys were saying. So Utah is a pretty dry state. We're prone to droughts, and we're also growing in population. So we're supposed to grow by, I think, double in the next like 50 or so years.
In Spanish Fork or Utah?
In Utah.
In Utah.
But
Oh
that
wow.
does reflect Spanish Fork.
That does, because we grow faster than anyone else in Utah. Okay.
We do. So there's a lot of increasing demand for water, but there's only so much water to go around. So big issue. And WaterWise is really just about being smart about how we use water in our landscapes. And so recently, I think it was last year, the city modified our municipal code to kind of consider that and make it easier and encourage people to use less water in their landscapes across all land uses.
So it's not like the city is not making us, or are they?
No,
A little
just
bit.
encouraging it.
Encouraging,
Yes.
okay.
Let's talk about, like, are they still doing Flip Your Strip?
Yep, so that's also a program that we encourage people to do. That's talking about the park strips, so the space between the sidewalk and the street, the little grass area.
Okay.
And there's a program, I believe it's a rebate program, so if you participate and kind of follow their guidelines, you can get money back for the work that you've done in your yard.
So you
Where
think that's
can
a
you
really
find that?
small area, but you think take all that grass out, and when we built our house, we just put cement there and trees, and
That was good.
because that was a really tricky part of your yard to keep
It is.
pretty.
It is.
So-
but-
Because it's not real, it's yours, but it feels like it's not, because there's sidewalk in between it.
Well, and it's really, is it really ours? It's really not ours, the strip. I mean, it is, but it's,
But it's
the
not.
city has,
Yeah, so the city
Yeah.
can help maintain it, but as the property owner, if you want to make changes to it, you kind of have to do that on your own
Okay.
dollar. And the city can provide you resources like our guidelines for water-wise landscapes. But really, it's up to you as the homeowner, and you're responsible for it. So.
Okay.
So I am interested to know, because you mentioned concrete. So if you flip that to concrete rather than maybe a grassy area, are there other ideas or options for maybe rock, or maybe even the fake grass? I mean, I just spent a lot of time in Nevada, and I'm out on my walk during spring break, and I just noticed how it's very pretty just to look at the fake grass.
Right.
So is that one of the incentives as well?
So we don't necessarily encourage like all concrete. You could do like
Okay.
pavers,
Okay.
so kind of smaller areas
Oh,
of that,
okay.
or like those stones where you can kind of make
Sure.
cool patterns out of it for cows and things like that.
Okay.
We do allow turf, but only in your backyard where you can't see it really. So we don't
Okay.
allow it in front yards, side yards, or the park strip.
Okay.
Only because it's harder to maintain over time, and while it can look nice, if it's not done correctly, it can cause
Well,
issues.
we have harsh winters as well, so it probably does beat it up a
Yeah,
little bit.
I would
So
imagine it would
that's
fade
the
it and
question,
make it,
right? And then
tricky.
even like kind of the polished rocks. You talked about pavers, but what about like polished rock landscape, or does that work?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be perfect. And then kind of intersperse some plants. You could do trees. We have an approved, like pre-approved shade tree list that you
Oh,
can
okay.
choose from. There's options outside of that, but that's kind of a guideline that we provide residents.
And then there's
so-
online, there's all this information, correct, about
Yeah.
that portion.
So there's a ton of information. If you go
Okay.
to SpanishFork.org/waterwise, we have information about our code. We have a residential guidebook, which I brought today.
Wow.
We also have,
Let's flip through
Right?
this.
Yeah.
Angel Middle.
So I can kind of go
I
through
know, and let
some
us know
of what's
what
in
is
there.
allowed and what is not. I just did this in my side yard.
Some pathways.
We did it on our own. It was a little tricky, but I've loved it because I had a piece of grass that was getting in that shady, not really growing. We were overwatering it, which it was pouring off of, and thus we did those stones and just made the whole part a little path.
Yeah. that's
And it worked
awesome.
out great.
Yeah,
And I
that's
can
awesome.
turn off my sprinklers, so I feel like I saved water.
Perfect.
So let's talk about then your job. So as part of this, obviously helping educate, because sitting here and asking you these questions, like it's not my forte, and it's more so your forte. So maybe educating folks how to be more water wise. So we've talked about it in the landscaping. Let's talk a little bit maybe even about, because I know nothing about this either, I'm just throwing this out there. What about recycling water?
I don't know that I can answer questions about recycling water.
Okay. That's okay.
If you want, I can kind of talk through some strategies for saving water in your landscape when you're designing that, whether it's
Yes,
installing a
that's a
new
good idea.
landscape
Okay.
or if
Yes.
you're a current homeowner and you want to just modify your
Well,
landscape.
aren't
that
we?
you do
I feel
have.
like we're always modifying.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want to build our last home, which we've been there almost 10 years, because I didn't want to put the yard in. Because we had just finished the yard in the previous house after 14 years. But then I thought, was it ever really done?
No,
gets
it never
lighter,
is.
maybe, you do
Right.
this section, this, but you're always like pulling out this,
Yeah.
putting in a new.
And then
so-
we've noticed, like in beds, like sometimes you have the little pipe just above ground, water spigots. What's best?
Yeah, so
Okay.
good thing to start small. So even if it's just a small portion of your yard or even just starting in the park strip. So one of the things that's in this guidebook that's great to start with is the local scapes approach. So it's like a 5-step approach for making your yard more water efficient, but also maintaining like the good looks of it and having
Okay.
your curb appeal. So our first one is going to be creating central open spaces. And this is really just about creating a focal point for your yard. This is typically where you want to use, we call it turf grass, which is really just like regular grass.
Okay.
Kind of misleading because it has the word turf in it.
Yes.
But if I say turf grass, I just mean regular
Grass.
grass that we know about. So this central open space is typically in your front yard. You can use the grass. It's kind of where high traffic areas would be. And then the next step is going to be designating gathering areas. So where you want to enjoy your yard, really. This could
Okay.
be having like a gazebo or a little fire pit. And in this space, you can use materials other than grass so that you're not having to water so much. So like mulch, gravel, the stones, things like that.
So what you're saying here is it doesn't have to be grass for a central
Gathering place.
So in my yard, I've always loved decks. I think because
Yeah.
when I grew up, my parents, in our different houses, we had decks. So we call it a floating deck because it's detached from the house and it's in a far corner, so away from the house. And it's literally only a foot off the ground.
Yeah.
But it gives it the dimension and it's treks, and then we have poles so we can hang our hammocks and put flower pots out there. So it is a gathering place, but some people may think, oh, that just has to be grass. But no,
Nope.
you can do pavers, a deck, all the different things
Yeah.
you suggested.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Well, I would even suggest to believe that even more modern architecture, I think that architects or designers are getting smarter about being more water wise. You see a lot more of dry yards opposed to, grass everywhere.
Yeah. It's also a good way to just have something different visually and make it
Yes.
a little bit more interesting.
Well, and sometimes all that grass isn't even used. And so we're watering it, we're mowing it, we're doing all that, and it could be utilized like way better. And so I feel like
Exactly.
you guys have created some ideas,
Yeah.
a plan.
So after you've kind of designated your focal point and your gathering areas where you're going to enjoy your yard, the next step is going to be activity zones. So this is maybe where your kids are going to play, so like a playground or
Trampoline pit.
Yes.
trampoline
Yeah.
pit, yeah, things like that, or a garden even. And kind of depends on the function of it, but this is another area where you could think about using other material other than grass. So maybe mulch or something along those lines.
Okay.
And then the step after that is connecting all of those spaces that you've created with paths. And
I did a bath.
yeah, this is a good
One thing
opportunity to use what we would call hardscape, so like the pavers, gravel, the stones. And then after you're done with all those, you can kind of fill in the rest with planter beds. Not necessarily like raised or anything, but just kind of like designated planter areas. And this is where you'd want to install like water efficient plants that are going to naturally use less water.
Okay.
And it's a good
Like
idea.
cactus?
Yeah, yeah.
Like things that will stay alive.
I mean, we're in
In
a
the
desert,
desert,
so
yeah,
we
right?
always, so I think we're all guilty of like wanting the big, beautiful, like
Yes.
colorful
I
flowers
want my
all the
peony
time.
bush in a certain place, and it's just not going to ever survive.
But I
Yeah.
think rethinking all of that, right?
And I think a great way is just to walk around your neighborhood. This is what I've done. And just like, oh, I like that. And go ask them, what is that? Or take a picture and then take it to your local nursery. Like whatever you're seeing that is flourishing. But don't think, if it's on a south-facing
yes.
part of a lot where it's maybe getting a lot of sun, don't assume, oh, I'll put that on the north side of my house where it's total shade. Like you need to think
Yes.
through it.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, you were on the exact right track of just think about plants that are going to be native to Utah or good in the Utah climate. There are some good examples around town. The city's even working on this themselves. We haven't done a great job in the past, so we're putting our best foot forward going forward with this waterwise landscaping. So like the North Park, that's been newly landscaped. Also Library Hall, there's some good examples. So
Perfect.
I couldn't tell you about specific residences, but those are some good public spaces that you could look for some direction.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll go take a
I
look. Well,
do
thank
like
you for
it.
educating us. And if we would like to
Yeah.
learn more, it's all online and
Yep,
Okay.
SpanishWork.org/waterwise. So
Awesome.
I feel wiser about water.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll be more water wise. Thank you so much.
you. Mary.
thanks for having me.